I'm here in Austin, Texas with Jason Bermas. He's a radio talk show host and a documentarian. Good to be with you, Jason.
Well, thanks for having me, man.
Do you want to tell our viewers a little bit about a couple of the videos you've made?
Sure. You know, I was one of the guys that brought you Loose Change, second edition and final cut. Obviously, that was probably one of the biggest viral videos of its time. Still, probably the #1 download in the world as far as full movies go. I mean, we dominated the Google charts for years. It got us mainstream exposure on networks like CNN and MSNBC, an entire History Channel special trying to debunk us. The cover of Time magazine carried our story. I mean, it was a pretty big roller coaster ride, and really, I feel woke a lot of people up to the fact that maybe the government and the mainstream media aren't always telling us the truth.
Right, and this was a video that focused exclusively on 9/11, correct?
Yes.
And
yes.
the biggest, what are some of the biggest, most egregious things that you think haven't been told?
You know, outside of the hijackers training at U.S. bases and the drills that went on that morning, such as, you know, the CIA drill that happened at 8:45 in the morning of a plane hitting a building out of the National Reconnaissance Office, and multiple hijacking drills, Operation Jackal Cave, Amalgam Virgo, those type things. Building 7 is obviously what screams to me something is wrong. And Building 7 was this 47-story skyscraper that was across the street from the World Trade Center. No other buildings had been severely damaged or collapsed that day. Yet this one fell into its own footprint at 5:20 in the afternoon, and it was just unexplainable. Then you find out what's inside of it, and it's the Office of Emergency Management, where all local government is supposed to go in the case of a terrorist attack or natural disaster, and no one's there. Then you find out it's the largest Secret Service office in the world. It's the largest CIA base outside of Langley, Virginia. It holds the Securities and Exchange Commission, the Department of Defense, the IRS, all these government agencies, and conveniently, all these government files are lost, and all these charges are dropped against people who were selling off gold in the Federal Reserve, and a ton of other scandals. So it really warrants more investigation.
So do you have any thoughts on why Building 7 came down there?
I think that Building 7 had to come down because of what was contained inside. Why they chose to take it down in that manner, I couldn't tell you. You know, there's a ton of theories out there. Oh, the plane that went down in Shanksville was headed for World Trade Center 7 and it just didn't make it and they had to take it out. I don't know. I just know that buildings aren't supposed to fall that way.
Right, right. So, besides these movies, I mean, you're obviously what I would broadly define as in the freedom movement, and working to basically turn people on to different ideas, get them to think for themselves, and you're using video as the medium.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you hope, like what's your end goal? What do you hope to bring about with this?
Well, you know, smaller government is one of those things, and the restoration of the Constitution and Bill of Rights. I would really like to see a repeal of the Patriot Acts, the Military Commissions Act. I would like to see a government for and by the people again. In other words, people like you and me possibly running for local office and then maybe federal office later on. You know, I want to see a restoration of the Constitution and Bill of Rights. I'm not a revolutionary, you know. So those are the types of things I hope that come out of this. Less government control over the media, less special interest control over the government. I mean, there are a ton of things that need work on this country, and like you said, I'm using video as the medium because people don't read anymore, man.
Right.
I mean, they speak MTV, they speak movie, and that's why I think it's so important that we can turn this around, flip it if you will, to try to speak to a younger audience, speak to a younger generation, and do so in a relatively short amount of time. I mean, I can sit here and talk to you all day. Someone's going to get disinterested or just turn it off and be like, oh, that's just someone saying it. Right. When I have the mainstream media articles and news stories along with actual experts on film, and it's in a very digestible fashion, that's when you turn people on to this movement. That's when you get people out in the streets.
Right. So let me go back to what you said. One of the end goals is smaller government, less government. But why even allow for a government besides self-government at all?
Sure. I do think that there is a need for some type of a government. For instance, good and evil, in my opinion, do exist. It's not just abhorrent behavior. It's not just because of scarcity, you know, that some people commit crimes. No, some people commit crimes because they're sociopathic. Some people commit crimes because they enjoy them. You know, to say that things were scarce for Jeffrey Dahmer just isn't relevant. I mean, the guy was pouring battery acid down, you know, teenage boys' eyeballs and literally creating sex zombies. You know, that's evil behavior.
Yeah.
And there has to be some kind of an organization to take care of things like that. There has to be some kind of an organization to take care of our roads, buildings, keep society moving. Now, it's my opinion that the smaller that is, the better. The less government control over our lives, the better. But at the same time, I don't think it's realistic to actually say that we'll ever be able to have no government whatsoever.
Right. Granted, it may not be realistic right now, but I don't think that should preclude us from advocating for the ideal. But I mean, you pointed out there are bad people out there, and I would agree with that. In a world with no government, it's not going to be utopia. There's going to be problems, and there's going to be evil people. But what I would say is that government provides this vehicle to give, like Hitler, for example, he was able to, he got elected, and he has millions of people at his beck and call to go out and do all this evil stuff. So, if you shrink the scope of government or eliminate it entirely, then you prevent these people from having authority over you.
I feel like people will always vie for power, and the more power they have, they really become more corrupt in most instances. That's where it comes out that says, power corrupts, but absolute power corrupts absolutely. And there's always been power struggles throughout history, and it's just my opinion that you're never going to be able to get rid of government altogether and have a functional society. Excuse me.
Well, what you're doing, especially with your videos, and what we're trying to do with Motorhome Diaries, is get out there, introduce people to ideas, get them to think for themselves, and change minds one at a time. That's where the real revolution is going to happen. Mm-hmm. If you're trying to reach these people and get them to think for themselves and say, oh, maybe 9/11, we don't have all the facts. The government isn't being as forthcoming with these facts, but at the same time, you don't think that they could change their mind to be able to live free themselves,
Well, I think individuals can, but again, it comes to an individual choice and something we talked about off camera, individual personal responsibility.
Right.
And not everybody has that, unfortunately, especially in today's society when people are more concerned with their iPhones than how the government is run. You walk up to an average person and say that there are 3 branches of government, and they'll look at you like, what, the government's a tree? No, the government had the executive, the legislative, and the judicial to try to keep power checks. We no longer have that. We have people saying national security and executive orders and expansion of powers, and we have Newsweek, showing covers of we are all socialists now under this new administration. So, I just think we're so far away from an enlightened society that would be able to function without a government now that it is just completely unrealistic to think that we'd be able to really achieve the goals of humanity or the majority of good humanity without a government. Now, unfortunately, the governments that we have right now are just openly tyrannical and dictator-like, if not outwardly dictators. In this country, you kind of have the veil that there's no dictatorship. Oh, you still have freedom of speech here. We may put you on the no-fly list, and we may classify you as a terrorist in this new DHS document if you're a hacktivist, or you're anti-illegal immigration, or you're part of the evil alternative media.
Right.
But at least I can sit here and talk about that on camera.
That's right. Yeah. That's true. Well, Jason, I appreciate your time today. I mean, we're both, I would say, in this broadly defined freedom movement, and like you said earlier, it's cool that we have disagreements and we challenge each other and let the best ideas.
Absolutely, and that's what I always say to people. Don't take my word for it. Go out, check out my material. It's free on the internet. You go see Fabled Enemies or Loose Change Final Cut right now at Google Video, and I love dissent. I love it when someone disagrees with me. That way we can put all ideas on the table and take from those ideas the best possible scenarios and try to make those realities.
Right on. All right, Jason.
All right, brother.
Keep it up.
Thank you.